You hang up the phone, and a familiar wave of exhaustion washes over you. The conversation wasn't a fight. Not really, but it left you feeling drained, anxious, and small. A voice in your head, the one conditioned by years of obligation, whispers, "But they're family. Loyalty is everything." You tell yourself this feeling is just a small price to pay for keeping the peace. It's your duty to endure. But what if I told you an ancient Stoic master, someone like Marcus Aurelius or Seneca, would see it completely differently? They wouldn't see this as a test of your loyalty. They'd see it as a critical warning sign that a relationship is attacking your most valuable asset, your inner peace. They would say the choice isn't between loyalty and betrayal. It's between your tranquility and their chaos. The moment you feel like you're shrinking in someone's presence is the moment to ask if that connection is truly serving you, or if you're just serving it. Welcome. If that scenario felt painfully familiar, you're not alone, and you are not wrong for feeling that way. We live in a world that puts family loyalty on a pedestal, often without ever asking us to check the price tag. We're taught that walking away is selfish, a sign that we failed. But the great Stoic philosophers saw it differently. They understood that your mind, your character, and your inner peace are the only things you truly control, and it's your highest duty to protect them. For them, choosing to distance yourself from someone who constantly unravels your soul isn't an act of anger. It's an act of rational self-preservation. It is the ultimate expression of wisdom and self-respect. So today, we're not going to talk about burning bridges in a fit of rage. We are going to walk through the calm, deliberate, and sometimes painful process of seeing when a relationship, even with family, has become a threat to your ability to live a good and peaceful life. Through the lens of Stoic wisdom, we'll explore 7 critical signs that it's time to lovingly, but firmly, cut ties. This isn't about blame. It's about reclaiming your peace. Sign 1. They consistently and unapologetically drain your energy. Let's start with the most obvious sign. That profound, recurring exhaustion you feel after every single interaction. This isn't the good kind of tired you feel after a day of meaningful work or a fun celebration. It's a deep, psychic drain, a feeling of being hollowed out. You might find yourself bracing for a phone call with them like you're preparing for battle, or needing hours, maybe even days, to recover from a simple visit. A Stoic would tell you that your energy, your attention, your focus, your emotional bandwidth is a finite, precious resource. It's the fuel you need to build a good life and pursue your purpose. Marcus Aurelius constantly wrote about not wasting energy on things that are trivial or outside of his control. A relationship that consistently leaves you depleted isn't just an inconvenience. It's a thief, stealing the very currency you need to thrive. Think about a man we'll call Alex. For years, Alex was the designated emotional dumping ground for his older sister. She'd call him every day with a relentless stream of complaints about her job, her money, her love life. Alex would listen, offer advice, and tell himself it was his duty as a brother. But whenever Alex was facing a real challenge of his own and tried to share, his sister would expertly pivot the conversation back to herself in minutes. He'd hang up feeling not only like his problems didn't matter, but now he was carrying her baggage too. He was perpetually tired, irritable, and resentful. One day, after a particularly draining call, he stumbled on a quote from Seneca. "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." It hit Alex like a ton of bricks. His relationship with his sister was a one-way street. He was a resource, not a relative. This wasn't a partnership. It was a transaction where he was always paying the bill. So here's the practical takeaway. Start treating your energy like you treat your money. Do an audit. After you interact with someone, do you feel richer or poorer? Uplifted or overdrawn? If someone consistently leaves your account in the red, that is not a sustainable relationship. A Stoic knows you can't pour from an empty cup. Protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's the prerequisite for being of service to anyone, including yourself. It might be time to limit withdrawals or even close the account. Sign 2. They consistently violate your boundaries. Boundaries are the invisible property lines we draw around our inner world. They define where we end and someone else begins, protecting our time, our values, and our right to say no. Sign number 2 is when someone in your life, especially family, consistently and willfully tramples all over those boundaries, no matter how clearly you state them. This can show up in a lot of ways. It could be the parent who keeps giving unsolicited advice on your career or your parenting, long after you've asked them to stop. It could be the sibling who borrows money and never pays it back, ignoring your financial limits. Or it can be the sneakier violation of emotional boundaries. The relative who uses guilt to control your choices, dismisses your feelings by calling you too sensitive, or shares your private struggles with others behind your back. To a Stoic, your inner citadel, your mind and your choices, is sacred ground. Epictetus taught that while we can't control what others do, we have absolute authority over our own domain. When someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries, they aren't just being rude. They're laying siege to your autonomy. They're sending a clear message. Your rules don't apply. Your comfort is irrelevant. And your self-governance is a problem for them. Consider the story of Maria. Her mother had a habit of showing up at her apartment unannounced. Maria loved her mom, but as an introvert who worked from home, these surprise visits shattered her focus and left her resentful. She tried explaining it gently. "Mom, I love seeing you, but it would really help if you could just call first." Her mother would agree, but a week later, there was the doorbell. Maria then tried being firmer. "Mom, you cannot come over without calling. It disrupts my work." Her mother got defensive, acting hurt, and accusing Maria of not loving her. But the visits continued. It was when Maria read about the Stoic principle of living in accordance with your nature that it all clicked. It is not natural to live in a state of constant anxiety, waiting for the next intrusion. She realized that by letting her mother violate her boundary over and over, she was teaching her that her words didn't matter. She finally understood the ultimate boundary wasn't a request. It was an action. She just stopped answering the door for unannounced visits. It was painful and led to a difficult fight, but for the first time, her boundary held. The bottom line is this: boundaries aren't suggestions. They're the rules of engagement for how people get to be in your life. If someone proves again and again that they are unwilling to respect those rules, a Stoic would argue it's time to rationally reassess their place in it. You can't change their behavior, but you can control whether you allow it in your sacred space. Sometimes, the only boundary that works is distance. Sign 3. They bring out the worst in you. Think about the person you're trying to become. Maybe you're working on being more patient, compassionate, or optimistic. Now, think about how you act around a specific person in your life. Do you suddenly become more irritable, cynical, or gossipy? Do you find yourself falling back into old, negative habits you thought you'd outgrown? If someone's presence consistently turns you into a version of yourself you don't like, that's a massive red flag. The Stoics knew that the company you keep shapes your character. Seneca famously wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." The process is a mutual one, for men learn while they teach. Relationships should lift you up. If a relationship is instead dragging you down, corrupting your character, and pulling you away from the virtues you're trying to build, it's acting like a poison to your soul. Let's look at two brothers, Mark and David. Mark was on a journey of self-improvement. He was quitting drinking, eating healthier, and trying to be more positive. David, on the other hand, was deeply cynical. Whenever they got together, David would mock Mark's efforts. "Oh, here comes the self-help guru," he'd sneer, pushing a beer in his direction. He'd spend the whole time complaining, criticizing their parents, and dredging up old fights. Mark started to notice a disturbing pattern. After every visit with David, he felt his own resolve crumble. He'd leave feeling angry, hopeless, and more likely to slip back into his old ways. The person he was around, his brother, was the exact person he was trying to leave behind. He loved his brother, but he had to admit that David's influence was actively sabotaging his growth. A Stoic wouldn't just blame David here. They'd tell you that you are responsible for the environment you put yourself in. You wouldn't expect a plant to thrive in a dark, toxic closet, so why would you expect your character to flourish in the company of those who prefer the dark? If someone's presence consistently pollutes your mind with negativity and doubt, you have a duty to yourself to limit that exposure. So, here's the task. Do an honest self-assessment. Who do you become in this person's presence? Does this relationship support the best version of yourself, or does it feed your worst impulses? Protecting your peace sometimes means protecting your character. Walking away from someone who brings out the worst in you isn't judging them. It's an act of allegiance to the person you are fighting to become. If any of this is hitting home for you, if you've felt that energy drain or that slow erosion of self, just take a moment and comment "my peace" below. It's more than a comment. It's an affirmation, a small but powerful declaration that you're committing to protect your inner tranquility. Sign 4. The relationship is built on manipulation and control. Healthy relationships are about trust and mutual respect. Toxic ones are built on something much darker: manipulation. This is sign number 4. A manipulator doesn't want a connection. They want control. And their tactics are often so subtle, especially in families, that they can be hard to spot. Manipulation comes in many flavors. There's the classic guilt trip. After everything I've done for you, you can't do this one little thing for me. There's gaslighting, where they twist reality to make you doubt your own sanity. "I never said that. You're just being hysterical." Or, "You're remembering it all wrong." There's playing the victim to deflect from their own bad behavior. And there's emotional blackmail, where love is a weapon given or withheld to control you. For a Stoic, manipulation is one of the greatest threats because it attacks your ability to think rationally. Epictetus taught that we aren't disturbed by events, but by our judgment of them. Manipulation is the act of deliberately poisoning someone else's judgment for personal gain. It creates confusion and self-doubt, making it impossible to maintain that calm, untroubled mind a Stoic strives for. Imagine a young woman named Chloe, whose father used his approval like a weapon. When she chose a career he didn't like, he went cold for months. When she dated someone he hadn't approved of, he'd make passive-aggressive comments to undermine her confidence. Chloe found herself constantly trying to anticipate his moods, making life choices based on what might win his affection. She was living in a state of constant anxiety, her life a performance for an audience of one. Her wake-up call was realizing the love she was chasing wasn't real. It was a carrot on a stick, always just out of reach, meant to keep her moving in the direction her father wanted. It was control, disguised as love. A Stoic would argue that true affection is given freely, without conditions. It doesn't have to be earned through obedience. So what do? You have to become a student of behavior, both theirs and your own. Do you feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells? Do you second-guess your own memory after talking to them? Do you feel like their love is conditional? If so, you're probably in a manipulative dynamic. A Stoic's duty is to seek truth. That means having the courage to see the relationship for what it is, not what you wish it was. Cutting ties with a manipulator isn't abandoning a person. It's escaping a prison. It's choosing to live in reality, not under the fog of someone else's control. Sign 5. The relationship lacks reciprocity. The 5th sign is a glaring imbalance. A healthy relationship is a dance of give and take, a mutual exchange of energy and support. But in some relationships, especially in families, one person does all the giving and the other does all the taking. It's not a relationship. It's a form of emotional vampirism. This lack of reciprocity is often hidden by a label. You're the responsible one, the peacemaker, or the strong one. These titles can feel like compliments, but they often just mask an unfair dynamic. You're the one who always remembers the birthdays, organizes the gatherings, and provides the listening ear. But when you're the one who needs help, the other person is suddenly busy, dismissive, or just unable to show up for you. Your needs are always an afterthought. The Stoics believed we have a natural duty to care for one another, but this duty isn't a blank check for exploitation. Seneca pointed out that a relationship must be a mutual process. Kindness has to flow both ways. When it only flows one way, it stops being a connection and becomes servitude. A relationship without reciprocity isn't a bond. It's a one-person show with a very tired performer. Consider two lifelong friends, Sarah and Emily, whose bond felt like family. Sarah was a natural giver. She helped Emily move 3 times, was her maid of honor, and spent countless nights counseling her through crises. But when Sarah's father passed away, Emily was MIA. She sent a brief text, but never called. She skipped the funeral, citing a busy week at work. For Sarah, this wasn't just a letdown. It was a betrayal that lit up years of imbalance she had refused to see. The scales fell from her eyes, and she realized she'd been pouring her heart into a friendship that had long been bankrupt. The hard truth, as a Stoic would see it, is that actions reveal a person's true character, not their words. You have to look at the relationship's ledger. Is there a fair exchange? Or are you funding the entire enterprise with your own emotional capital? The practical takeaway is to test the dynamic. Start saying no and see what happens. Pull back your energy a little. Stop being the first to call. If they don't step up to fill the gap, or if they react with anger and entitlement, you have your answer. Their interest was never in you, only in what you provided. Walking away from a one-sided relationship isn't selfish. It's demanding the basic respect of being seen as an equal. Sign 6. They are a source of endless negativity and chaos. The 6th sign is when a person is a perpetual storm cloud in your life. Their main ways of communicating are complaining, criticizing, or stirring up drama. Every conversation is a trip into a swamp of negativity. They find the worst in every situation, the fault in every person, and seem to thrive on chaos. When you're around them, the world just feels a little darker. The Stoics knew your environment dramatically shapes your mind. They'd argue that just as you wouldn't choose to live next to a noisy, polluting factory, you shouldn't willingly spend your time with people who pollute your mind. Peace is the highest good, and these individuals are agents of turbulence. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote about preparing himself each morning for the difficult people he might encounter, acknowledging they would be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But his practice was about fortifying himself for brief, unavoidable encounters, not inviting these people to live in his head. He knew that prolonged exposure to chaos would destroy his own tranquility. Think of a family where one member is addicted to drama. Let's call her Aunt Carol. At every gathering, Carol is at the center of a new crisis. She'll pull people aside to whisper about another relative's supposed flaws, interpret an innocent comment as a personal attack, or create a fight out of thin air. People learn to walk on eggshells around her, their anxiety spiking the moment she enters a room. The whole point of the gathering to connect and celebrate is lost, replaced by the need to manage Carol. A Stoic would look at this situation with cold, hard logic. You cannot control Aunt Carol. You cannot fix her need for drama, but you can control your participation in it. By continuing to show up and engage, you are in effect feeding the chaos. You're giving the performance an audience. The insight here is that you have a choice. You can step out of the storm. This might mean declining certain invitations, keeping conversations superficial, or in extreme cases, cutting off contact. It is not your job to calm their storm. It's your job to protect your own ship from being wrecked by it. This isn't about judging them. It's about valuing your own peace enough to remove yourself from the source of the turmoil. Sign 7. You have to betray yourself to keep the peace. This final sign is the most profound and the most painful. It's when you realize that to keep the relationship, you have to become someone you're not. It requires you to silence your own thoughts, suppress your own values, and shrink your spirit just to make them comfortable. To keep the peace with them, you have to declare war on yourself. This self-betrayal can be obvious, like pretending to agree with views you find disgusting just to avoid a fight. Or it can be a slow, quiet death by 1,000 cuts. You stop sharing your wins because you know they'll be met with jealousy. You stop expressing your real feelings because you know they'll be dismissed. You perform a version of yourself that is more palatable to them, a muted, watered-down you. In short, you abandon yourself to keep them. For the Stoics, living with virtue and integrity was the entire point. Marcus Aurelius famously said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Your primary duty is to your own character." A relationship that demands you compromise your core values, be dishonest, or act against your conscience is asking for a kind of spiritual suicide. It's asking you to sacrifice your integrity for a connection that, by its very nature, is fake. Consider the journey of someone who grows beyond their family's expectations. Maybe they develop new beliefs, adopt a different lifestyle, or find a passion their family doesn't get. To stay connected, they feel they have to hide these parts of themselves. They start leading a double life, the person they really are and the person they pretend to be for their family. This internal conflict is exhausting and deeply lonely because no one in their original circle truly knows them. A Stoic master would tell you this is no way to live. Your growth is not a betrayal. Walking away from a relationship that demands you betray your own soul is the highest form of loyalty. Loyalty to your own path and to the truth of who you are. It's a recognition that you can't build a meaningful life on a foundation of dishonesty. So, the final, actionable insight is this: your peace should never be a negotiation. Your identity should never be a compromise. If a relationship consistently forces you to choose between who you are and who they want you to be, it's time to choose yourself. This isn't about rejecting them. It's about fully accepting yourself. The decision to cut ties, especially with family, is one of the hardest choices a person can make. It cuts against everything we've been taught. But as we've seen through the lens of Stoic wisdom, real loyalty isn't blind endurance. And true strength isn't how much pain you can absorb. The Stoics teach us that our primary allegiance must always be to our own inner peace and moral character. Protecting your tranquility isn't selfish. It's the fundamental job of a rational human being. When a relationship, no matter the label, consistently becomes a source of energy drain, boundary violations, manipulation, chaos, or self-betrayal, it's no longer a relationship. It is a threat to your well-being. Walking away isn't an act of hate. It's a rational, disciplined act of self-respect. It is a quiet declaration that you will no longer set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. It's the courage to choose a difficult peace over an easy conflict, and the wisdom to know that some people are better loved from a distance. The space created by their absence isn't an empty void. It is sacred ground where you can finally begin to heal, grow, and rebuild the peace they so consistently took from you. Your peace is your power. Don't surrender it for anyone. If these insights have given you some clarity or strength, please give this video a like to help it reach others who might be struggling in silence. Subscribe for more Stoic wisdom on reclaiming your peace and building a life of resilience. And be sure to watch this video next to learn the Stoic art of setting boundaries without guilt. Remember, you are the guardian of your inner world. Protect it well.